The fire crackled softly in the darkness of the canyon, casting long shadows across the red stone as the wind whispered between the pine trees. He didn't move. The warrior, wrapped in silence, sat cross-legged, a thick blanket draped over broad, time-worn shoulders. His face was a tapestry of scars and memories, none more striking than the curved line running from brow to jaw, a story never told. Across from him, seated on a worn blanket, she spoke with a voice so soft it seemed the wind had to lean in to hear. No one knew his real name. They only called him the Marked One. It was said he once felled 3 men with a single strike, that he fought beside generals and against desert demons. But here, under the faint glow of a waxing moon, he was no legend, just a man, listening to a woman share a story that might change everything. Her name was Lila, or at least that was what she offered to those lucky enough to hear her speak. Her eyes were the color of burnt cedar, dark, deep, and full of truths she would never speak outright. She had arrived only hours ago, but already felt as though she belonged to the land. She'd found the warrior near the dry riverbed where owls never called. He hadn't said a word, only offered firewood and a nod. Now, by the firelight, time itself seemed to still in reverence to her words. "I watched him die," she began, and the warrior only blinked. "My brother." A spear through his chest, gripping my hand like that could anchor him to this world. Her gaze drifted into the flames. War took many, but not the worst part. The worst stayed behind. In me. In my bones. His scar twitched, almost imperceptibly. He didn't interrupt. She continued, her voice gliding like water over ancient stones. "He was better than me. Strong but kind. He had dreams. I only had anger. After he was gone, I hunted those responsible. I didn't sleep, didn't smile. Just vengeance. That word burns hotter than any fire. You know it, don't you?" Their eyes met for a moment. She saw something in his, maybe pain, maybe shame, but he didn't flinch. Just listened. Lila pulled her shawl tighter and looked up at the stars. "I thought that killing them would bring peace. It didn't. The pain just changed shape. That's when I heard about you." The warrior tilted his head slightly but said nothing. The fire hissed as if reacting to her truth. "They say you fought the Dustborn clan, crossed the Deadlands alone to avenge a shattered village, killed your own commander when you learned he sold the bodies of the fallen to blood mages. They say your footsteps are soaked in blood." He didn't confirm, didn't deny, just prodded a coal with a branch. "But what they don't say," she whispered, "is what you feel afterward, when the blood dries, when everyone else is dead, when you're the only one left, alone, with the memory, with the scar." The last word lingered like smoke. He inhaled slowly, eyes locked on the fire. She didn't expect answers. She knew he wouldn't give them, but his silence had its own language. "I came because I thought maybe you'd understand. Not what I did, but why I can't sleep anymore." She extended her hands toward the flames, revealing faint scars at her wrists. "The ghosts don't haunt me. I carry them." The warrior pulled something from beneath his cloak, a small, smooth stone, black as ash. He handed it to her without a word. Lila turned it in her palm, puzzled. "Basalt," she murmured, "from the crater, where the sky once fell." He nodded. His way of saying, "I was there too." The silence between them deepened, but not uncomfortably. It was the stillness of 2 survivors sharing the same cave of memory. She brushed her hair aside, revealing a patch of burnt skin near her ear. "Third siege. I didn't know screams could last that long. Thought I was cursed." He finally looked at her, eyes weathered but aware. It was as if to ask, "Do you still think that?" She gave a soft, almost mournful smile. "Now I think I was just learning how to survive." The wind shifted. Pine needles rustled. Somewhere far off, a coyote cried into the night. Lila glanced toward the sound but wasn't startled. Nothing about this night surprised her anymore. "I once followed a man for 16 days, she said softly. "He didn't know I was behind him, not even once. He slept with both eyes shut. I waited until the last sunrise of the new moon to strike." The warrior's gaze didn't waver, but the faintest movement in his fingers betrayed recognition of her patience, her precision. He had known that kind of hunger. "I thought revenge would make me feel powerful," she went on, "but afterward, I just felt hollow, like I had killed a part of myself too." She looked down at the basalt stone in her hand. Its surface reflected the fire's glow, distorted and warped. Do you know what this looks like to me? A heart burned clean, cold, empty. He took a breath but didn't speak. His silence was not absence. It was respect. You were there, she said, holding up the stone. In the crater, after the fall. You saw what the sky did when it tore open. You saw the black rain. His eyes flickered. Yes. I lost someone there, she added, voice breaking for the first time. A friend. She wasn't a soldier, just a healer. She ran back into the fire to save someone who was already gone. Lila shook her head. Her name was Mara. She braided my hair. She used to hum lullabies to calm my panic attacks. The soldiers joked that she was soft, but when the fire came, they ran. She didn't. She paused, letting the silence mourn with her. You ever love someone like that? She asked. He didn't nod. He didn't shake his head, but the way his jaw clenched, the subtle shift in his eyes, those were answers. She saw them and didn't press. I used to wonder what kind of man doesn't cry anymore, she whispered, but now I know. It's the kind who ran out of tears. She leaned forward, feeding another stick to the fire. They say the mark on your face came from a duel with the Iron Warden of Thorn Rock, that he broke your sword and nearly took your eye. The warrior turned slightly, his scar catching the flame's flicker, but he said nothing. I heard a different story, Lila said, her voice even softer now. That you were protecting a child, that you stepped between her and a slaver's blade, that it wasn't battle, it was sacrifice. That got a reaction. His hand tightened into a fist, so slowly she almost missed it. I believe the second story, she added, not smiling. Just truth. Because you don't sit in silence by a fire with someone like me unless you understand what it costs to carry other people's pain. The wind calmed. The fire popped. Her voice became more fragile, like she wasn't just speaking to him anymore, but to the ghost inside her chest. I was 12 when I saw my father's body swinging from a tree. The soldiers left him there for days as a warning. My mother screamed until her voice shattered. I never heard her sing again. Lila pulled her knees to her chest, voice barely audible. That was the day I learned there's a kind of silence louder than war. The silence after. He moved slightly closer. Not enough to touch her. Just enough for her to know she wasn't alone in that memory. Do you know what I hated most? She whispered. Not the men who did it. Not even the commanders who allowed it. I hated myself for surviving. The fire crackled louder, as if objecting to her self-condemnation. She let the tears come now, but they were silent, like his, like the desert. I tried to be strong, she continued, to become what they feared, and I did. But somewhere along the way, I lost the girl who braided flowers. I lost the one who sang in the river. She died before they ever touched my family. I just didn't notice. The warrior leaned forward, picked up a glowing ember with a stick, and let it burn away to ash. His eyes never left the flame. I think, Lila said slowly, that's what scars really are. Not reminders of wounds, but proof of who we couldn't save. She opened her palm. The basalt stone felt heavier now. So tell me, warrior, when you close your eyes, do you see the ones you killed, or the ones you couldn't protect? He didn't answer with words, but his breath caught, his face stiffened, and the way his hand gripped the edge of his cloak told her all she needed. She nodded. Same here. The fire had burned lower now, reduced to glowing coals and the occasional flicker of flame. Lila's voice, still soft, now carried a new weight, denser, older, like someone reading from the pages of a history no one dared to archive. They gave me medals, she said almost to herself. After the siege, said I was brave, that I turned the tide, but they didn't see me in the aftermath. Kneeling in the mud, blood in my hair, my blade trembling in my hands, not from exhaustion, but because the last face I saw before I plunged it down looked like my brother's. The warrior shifted, the leather strap across his shoulder creaking slightly. She noticed. I wonder if you've ever had to kill someone you once knew, she asked. Someone who shared your rations, who laughed with you under starlight, who wrote letters to their mother and asked you to deliver them, just in case. He reached under his cloak again and slowly pulled out a folded piece of cloth. Carefully he unwrapped it, a small locket, aged and weathered, revealing a faded drawing of a boy and a girl. She saw it and didn't speak for a moment. Yours? She asked. He nodded once. Who were they? He closed the locket and looked at the fire. The silence stretched again. but it wasn't cold. It was reverent. Then, in a voice so low it could have been a whisper on the wind, he spoke. Just one word. Siblings. She didn't respond immediately. She let the word settle, respecting the rarity of it. Lost? He nodded again, slower this time. How? His mouth opened, then closed. Instead, he pointed to the scar on his face. She understood. Not all wounds are from enemies. You blame yourself. He didn't deny it. Me too, she whispered. Every night, I go over every step, every second. If I had moved faster, spoken louder, if I had been stronger. She trailed off. He met her gaze. We never forgive ourselves, she said, even when others do. Then she leaned forward, elbows on her knees, her hands trembling slightly. There's something else I haven't told anyone. The warrior watched her closely, still as a stone. The day after the siege, I found a child in the rubble, covered in ash, clutching a burnt rag doll. Her eyes were wide, not with fear, with emptiness, like she had already left, and her body was just waiting to follow. Lila swallowed hard. I should have held her, helped her, but I couldn't. I turned and walked away. I told myself I had to report to command, that I couldn't carry her weight too. But the truth was, I was afraid that if I held her, I'd break. Her voice cracked now, raw. She died. 3 hours later, alone. The warrior didn't move, but something in his expression shifted. It wasn't judgment. It was familiarity. Why do you think we're still alive? She asked. Out of everyone, why us? He didn't answer, but she wasn't finished. I used to think it was punishment, that we were cursed to walk with the dead inside us. But lately, I've started to wonder if maybe it's because we're the ones who remember. She looked at the fire again. They called me a hero, but the people I buried didn't get statues. No songs, no pages in history books, just silence and shallow graves. The warrior stirred slightly, as if trying to speak, but he hesitated, so she continued for him. You ever think about laying down your weapon and just disappearing? He exhaled slowly through his nose, then nodded. I tried, she said. 3 years ago, I went north, found a quiet village in the snow, told them I was a merchant's widow, sold herbs, learned to smile again, even met someone. Her eyes glazed over, not from romance, but the cruelness of what followed. They found me, the men I'd hunted. One of them still lived. He recognized me. The warrior already knew the ending. He didn't need to hear it. They burned the town, she whispered. He laughed when he lit the match. The fire hissed. Somewhere behind them, a branch snapped in the woods, but neither flinched. Pain had made them both too tired to fear anything else. I killed him, she said. I made sure he died slow, but it didn't change anything. The snow still turned red. The laughter still echoes. She looked at the warrior again, her eyes pleading for something neither of them knew how to name. Tell me you understand. And this time, he spoke, barely above the wind, his voice rasped with the weight of years. I do. 2 words, enough to shatter the dam behind her eyes. She didn't cry loudly. The tears just fell, tracing silent rivers down her dust-covered face. The warrior leaned back, hands resting on his knees. He stared into the coals, as if trying to divine something from the fire's fading light. She wiped her face, but didn't apologize. Not for the tears. Not anymore. I think, she said, this is why we don't die. Because someone has to tell the truth. The fire was nearly out. Only a few embers remained, glowing like buried stars. The air had grown colder, and yet neither of them moved to rekindle the flames. It was as though they needed the darkness now, like a blanket to shield them from the truth. Lila sat with her arms wrapped around her knees, staring into nothing. Truth, she repeated softly. It's not the kind people want. They prefer legends. Heroes who die for glory. Villains who burn for revenge. Not this. Not 2 broken souls trying to breathe in silence. The warrior shifted slightly, and she noticed the subtle tension in his posture. He was remembering something. Reliving it, maybe. I once killed a man in front of his son, he said, voice low and raw. Lila didn't react, just listened. He'd led a raid on a refugee camp. Dozens dead. Children. The warrior's eyes flicked to hers, just for a heartbeat. I hunted him for weeks. Found him hiding in a barn, Thought he was alone. A long pause. I was wrong. He rubbed his thumb along a callus on his palm, like trying to erase the memory embedded in the skin. The boy screamed. He continued. Not in fear, in grief. He ran to his father's body. I stood there, sword still dripping, and the only thing I could think was, this is how it happens. This is how another one becomes me. Lila looked down. And did he? The warrior shook his head. He ran. I never saw him again. They sat in silence, broken only by the occasional rustle of wind through dry leaves. Then Lila spoke again, her voice steady despite the weight behind it. I buried my brother with my own hands, dug the grave with a broken piece of armor. The earth was hard, my fingers bled, but I couldn't let them leave him like that. I sang while I worked, a lullaby our mother used to sing when the storms came. She looked up at the sky, as if seeking a face among the stars. I haven't sung since. The warrior tilted his head, the fire's last flickers casting shadows across his face. Why now? He asked. Lila blinked. Why tell you? He nodded. She shrugged. Maybe because you don't try to fix it, or change it. You just carry it, like me. The warrior stared into the embers. Because there's no fixing it. She nodded. Only surviving it. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Then, as if prompted by some unseen thread, Lila reached into her satchel and pulled out a small object wrapped in linen. She unfolded it carefully, revealing a dagger, old, well-worn, but meticulously cleaned. This was his, she said. My brother's. I've carried it every day since he died. She held it out to the warrior. He hesitated. It's not for keeps, she said. Just hold it. He took it gently, running a thumb along the edge. The blade was still sharp, a weapon kept alive by memory. Lila watched him. I used it once, to take a life. But after that, I couldn't. It didn't feel right. Like it knew it wasn't meant for revenge. He handed it back, and she wrapped it again with care. It's not just a weapon, she said. It's a grave marker, for who I was before all this. The warrior looked at her. And who are you now? She met his gaze. Someone trying to remember what peace feels like. He nodded slowly, then reached into his cloak and drew out a thin strip of cloth, black, frayed and faded with age. He laid it on the ground between them. What is it? She asked. The banner of my old unit, he replied. We were known as the Silent Thorns. She recognized the name. They say none of you survived. He gave a faint, bitter smile. They were half right. She reached out and touched the cloth gently. What happened? He looked away. We were sent to clear a village rumored to harbor enemy scouts. It was a lie. There were no scouts, just families, children. A beat. My commander gave the order. I refused, so he ordered the others to carry it out. Lila's voice was hushed. And they did? He nodded. I tried to stop them, killed 2 of my own men, but I was too late. When it was over, I burned the banner, buried the dead, walked away. She stared at him, eyes glistening. You never told anyone. Who would believe me? She swallowed. I would. He looked at her, and for the first time his face softened. Then, maybe, he said, this story isn't over. The sky above them had turned a deep velvet, stars blinking into existence like memories surfacing after years of silence. The wind had calmed. Even the forest seemed to be listening now. Lila placed the dagger back in her satchel, her hands lingering over the flap as if reluctant to close it. You know, she said slowly, I used to dream of dying in battle. Thought it would make everything make sense. Like, if I bled out in the dirt fighting, then all the pain would be justified. The warrior didn't flinch. I used to pray for it. She looked at him. You prayed? He gave a faint nod. Not to gods, to ghosts. Asked them to take me. Every night. Lila smiled sadly. They never did. He shook his head. Cowards. That made her chuckle. A soft, worn sound that still carried warmth. Or maybe they knew we still had work to do. She rose slowly, stretching her legs. The fire was just a whisper now, barely alive. She walked a few paces from the circle and looked into the darkness beyond. I came here with a purpose, she said. The warrior watched her, alert but calm. I was told you could help me, she continued. Not just listen, not just understand, but help. He tilted his head. With what? Lila turned around, eyes sharp again. There's a name I carry, a man. He runs a fortress beyond the Black Ridge. No law touches him, no guilt. He profits from war, sells children to the mines, buys soldiers with silver and slaughters towns when they resist. The warrior's brow furrowed. I need him gone, she said simply. Not for revenge, not even for justice, for the future. Because if he stays alive, others like him rise. The warrior didn't respond immediately. He stood now too, stretching, testing his weight as if calculating. What's his name? He asked. Darrow, she said. Lord Commander Elias Darrow. The name hit the air like steel. Even the night grew colder. I've heard of him, the warrior murmured. They say his fortress is impregnable, guarded by assassins, fed by bribes. She nodded. I know. That's why I need someone who's walked through fire and didn't burn. He stared at her for a long time, then finally asked, Why me? Lila stepped closer, her face just visible in the faint glow. Because you're the only one who didn't ask what he did to me. He looked at her, really looked, and the silence between them became heavier than iron. Her eyes were calm, not cold, focused. He hurt people, she added. I'm not one of them, but I've seen what he does, and I swore, on my brother's grave, that I would end it. The warrior folded his arms. And after? What do you mean? After he's dead. Then what? She looked up at the stars. I don't know. Maybe I disappear. Maybe I find peace. Or maybe I just sit by another fire and tell someone else my story. He nodded slowly, considering. Then, without a word, he walked over to his saddlebag and pulled out a folded map. He opened it on a flat stone and pointed. The Black Ridge runs here, he said. If Darrow's still using the supply routes I remember, there's a gap near the Serpent's Spine, unpatrolled. Dangerous terrain, but possible. She knelt beside him. We'll go together? He looked at her. If you're asking me to help kill a tyrant, I'll listen. But if you're asking me to help you live after, that's harder. She held his gaze. I don't expect you to carry me. Good, he said, because I'll already be carrying myself. She smiled. They sat side by side, studying the map in silence. The plan wasn't perfect. There were too many unknowns. But for the first time in years, both of them had something to move toward that wasn't a grave or a ghost. After a while, she asked, Do you think it matters? What we've done? What we've become? The warrior exhaled. It matters if we don't stop. And if we do? He folded the map. Then maybe we become something else. What? He looked up at the stars. Human again. The coals behind them finally died, sending a puff of smoke into the night. She rose, brushing dust from her cloak. We leave at dawn? He stood too. Before it. She turned to walk back toward her pack, but then paused. Thank you, she said. He didn't reply, just gave a small nod, the kind that says everything without a sound. The sky began to shift. A faint silver peeled across the horizon like the edge of a blade. Dawn crept into the world not with fire, but with the quiet of breath held too long. They moved without words. Packs tightened, weapons checked, silence honored. The path toward the Black Ridge was cruel terrain, jagged, narrow, whispering of old ambushes and bones buried where screams never reached ears. But neither Lila nor the warrior hesitated. Their feet knew how to walk where hope didn't follow. Hours passed. They crossed the dry gulch where thorn wolves once hunted, climbed shale cliffs that bled rock dust into their eyes. Somewhere in the distance a storm growled, not yet here, but inevitable. At midday they reached the rise where the fortress came into view. Darrow's stronghold wasn't carved from stone. It had been stolen from it. Pillars from temples long gone. Gates reinforced with metal taken from burnt villages. Towers tall enough to mock the heavens. Lila crouched beside a fallen stump, glassing the perimeter with a broken spyglass. 2 guards at the south gate, another on the parapet. No sign of patrol behind the ridge wall. The warrior said nothing. He watched the movement of shadows instead. How long they stayed. How fast they shifted. We don't get second chances, she murmured. He pointed toward the base of a side wall where erosion had collapsed part of the foundation. There, tonight, before the moon rises. They fell back into the trees, waited, prepared. That night, the silence was different. Not sacred, not healing. It was final. They slipped through the broken wall like ghosts who had been here before. The courtyard was empty. A dog barked once and fell silent, her dagger, swift, precise. Inside the walls, corridors coiled like veins. Every step forward was a choice between past and present. The warrior moved like shadow, Lila like breath. When they found Darrow, he wasn't in armor. No blade on his belt. Just silk robes and ink-stained hands. Writing letters. Orders, maybe. Or farewells. He looked up. Saw them. Didn't scream. Didn't reach for a weapon. He smiled. "I wondered how long it would take," he said. "I had bets placed on you both." Lila didn't speak. Her dagger gleamed in her hand, lowered but firm. "I remember your face," Darrow said to her. "You were the one screaming when they dragged the boy from the mill. Your eyes burned." She stepped closer. "I remember yours too," she replied. Then she turned to the warrior. "This is your choice too." He stepped forward, stopped, looked at Darrow, then past him. At the shelves, the maps, the correspondence. He walked over, opened a drawer. Documents, names, towns, orders for caravans, ledgers of trade, slaves. He found a letter sealed with red wax, broke it, read. Then he looked at Darrow. "You sold them." Darrow shrugged. "They were already broken." The warrior struck. It wasn't rage, it wasn't justice, it was memory. Darrow gasped once, then slumped forward, the ink from his quill pooling with the blood from his throat. Lila didn't flinch. She walked past him, straight to the shelves. Her hands found a journal, opened it. She stopped on a page, a name, her brother's, and beneath it, a price. She closed the book, held it to her chest. For the first time in years, she exhaled. They burned the fortress before dawn. No trophies, no banners taken, just ash where there had once been cruelty. They didn't speak during the descent. When they reached the edge of the ridge, where the earth rolled gently into the valley, Lila finally stopped. "I think," she said, "I need to go west. There's a girl there. A cousin. She thinks I'm dead." The warrior nodded. She looked at him. "And you?" He gazed out at the horizon, where smoke still climbed like a final prayer. "I'll find another fire." They stood together for a moment that wasn't measured in seconds. Then she placed the dagger in his hand. "Keep it," she said. "Not for me, for the one after." He accepted it without a word. She turned, walked away, her silhouette swallowed by morning. He remained still long after the wind rose. Then, slowly, he knelt, pressed the dagger into the soil, and finally let go of the locket.